Jim Duke Radio Network. A rational voice in a world of conspiracy. Jim Duke Perspective.
All right, so there's many Christian apologetics out there at this time defending their place to honor the Christmas celebration as a Christian festival, and even they're even telling me the beliefs and origins are rooted in Christianity, not paganism. Have you heard any of these things, Darren? Because I have throughout the years.
Several. I think everybody has by now something. They know something is off a little bit.
No, I mean, have you heard those that defend that it was originally it was a Christian origin for Christmas? Totally.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to share some things, but it's not a popular topic. Mind you, every year people hate this topic. They hate us talking about this. They hate us bringing up the fact. And the bottom line is they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to take the traditions. They're going to keep going with the traditions. They're going to pretend it's Jesus' birthday, whether it is or isn't. It's irrelevant to them. And they don't care what we say about it. So all I'm doing is sharing why I'm uncomfortable about it, all right? I'll share why I'm comfortable. I'm not going to say whether, I'm going to tell people, out with the pitchforks, Darren, anybody going to traveling house to house we're going to come after you. We're going to pitchfork you. I'm not even going to tell people not to join in the festivities if they want. I don't care.
But just give the facts and truth of the origin?
Yeah. I'm just trying to narrow it down and find out the origins. Because many Christians are defending that this is their celebration. Because, some of the facts I heard, believe it or not, Darren, one of the facts that I heard that it's a Christian origin is just look at the name Christmas. It's not named after another god, so obviously it's a Christian festival, right? That's what they say, because it's named after that. Well, my point is, was it named after that after taking on some other celebration festival? Or was it originally a Christmas? Was it originally a dedication that Christians got together and said, hey, let's start to gather together and honor the birth of Christ that may have happened another day on this day of December 25th?
Good question.
That's my point. And the similarities, as we mentioned last time, to early Roman festival of Saturnalia are just uncomfortably similar. And Christians seem to have adopted many of the aspects and just simply replaced Saturn with Jesus. That's what it seems like. So it's the Roman Saturnalia that became Christmas. Now, there's a debate about that. Am I saying that Saturnalia was first and then they changed the name to Christian and just kind of changed the emblems of Saturnalia to Christmas? I'm not saying that at all, because during the Roman times they still honored Saturnalia. The Christians recognized the Roman Saturnalia. There's documents of like Pliny the Younger. He said due to his inevitable wanting to participate in the festival because it was so loud and prominent, he boarded up his study so he can be distracted from it because it was contagious, and he didn't want to join in the Saturnalia festival. But then you get earlier Christians after that who started, from the Roman Catholic tradition, called it Christmas for the Mass, and they started honoring Christ on the day of around the time of the Saturn festival, because it said that the Romans were trying to appease the pagans, and the Christians would try to, they wanted the Christians to. They wanted to bring the Christian faith to the pagans, and the only way to do that was to abolish the pagan relics and switch them with Christianity. But then you get Christians that say, why would the Christians who were dedicated faith believers submit to a Roman festival and take the profane pagan festival and appease them and celebrate. So that's the argument that a lot of people give, is that Christians wouldn't just submit to a pagan festival back then. So therefore, it couldn't have been pagan. That's their information. But they're talking about latter-day Catholicists, universal religion of Christianity, after the state got a hold of it, and after, you talk about after martyrdom and all that stuff, where it kind of fused with paganism, and the Catholic, Roman Catholic Church took over, kind of counterfeited or confiscated the aspects of the faith, in which they did kind of bring their events. But the similarities, it's just that there's some that debunk that there's a myth because of the sketchy articles linking the two events, and not all the practices came into Christmas. That's what a lot of people are saying. The homes of Saturnalia were decorated with wreath and greeneries and green lights, candle lights lit to celebrate the light of the god. And trees were often adorned with ornaments to honor the god. And people offered gifts to one another as an offering to the gods. Now, this is fact. And these are the same aspects we do see in Christmas. The time was given off for labor and stores were closed, just like they are. And people celebrated together and played games, sang songs, drank, had fun, and forfeited disputes. However, there's a claim out there that the first celebration of Christmas was celebrated on the actual birth of Christ, and that the pagans adopted the festival from the Christians. But we've seen some, what's that?
It's one or the other.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Saturnalia was 200 years at least before Christ.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
And the pagan celebrations, my son brought up the fact that, my younger son brought up the fact that despite the Christians believing that the pagans adopted it from that, there's more proof that they were already celebrating this stuff 200 years before Christ. And not only that, the fertility worship of the greeneries and the berries and the all this stuff that they honored in this December season were well before all this, because the pagans did it in Babylon and all this, so it carried on these same aspects. Just the fact that they renamed it Christmas, and now the pagan festivals kind of been pushed aside. They don't really worship. You don't hear much about Saturn worship today, right?
No.
So many Christians will say, we won. We won it out. We took over a pagan festival, and we dismissed all the gods. So what harm is it that we're celebrating Jesus Christ on another God's birthday? That's what they're saying. I'm uncomfortable with that, Darren. Are you?
Yes, I am. It's like celebrating your wife's birthday on your previous girlfriend's birthday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I got a different scenario for it. It's like taking a celebration like All President's Day, Washington's birthday, and they glom all the different presidents in there, like Lincoln, and they celebrate all the presidents on one day.
Right.
It would be like that, except for we're not celebrating the other gods on Christ's birthday. We're celebrating Christ on all the other gods' birthdays.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But there's a dispute that it's not really anybody's birthday. So Christians uniquely picked December 25th. Think that's true?
Well, I know the ballpark of when he was born in all likelihood, so it was definitely not in December.
All right, what do you say?
My guess is September 11th. I could be off of 3 days or so.
I think you're more accurate than what the claim is. I heard Christian defenders of Christmas actually claim that it was most likely Jesus was conceived in March, and March 25th exactly, in which his birth would be 9 months later on December 25th. They actually defend that his actual birthday is December 25th. Now, how did they come up with March 25th conception?
I'm sure it's some type of god, pagan or whatever.
I don't know. These are Christians that claim they have authentic proof. I don't know how they could come up with it. And the other claim that I've heard is that it was the reformers who made up all the Christian Christmas myths against Christmas because they wanted to abolish it. Do you know they banned it even in this country until like the 1800s?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they forbade it, and then the Dutch came in and they started the tradition back over again. But and today you forget about that. But they say that was the reformers that did that, and they dishonored Christ by abolishing the remembrance of his birthday. So the one fact is that they say Christians first honored the birth of Christ on December 25th, which wasn't during Saturnalia, because Saturnalia was December 17th to December 23rd. So it wasn't close enough, Darren, to say that it was celebrated in lieu of Saturnalia.
Right.
But why is his birthday celebrated on December 25th around the solstice? Why is it even in December if we can't prove it was?
You got all right. You can't prove it was right, but if you use circumstantial evidence, there's much for September,
Yeah, but I've heard Christians adamantly go on there on YouTube videos and say that the Christians celebrated December 25th because he was conceived in March, and this is the authentic date, and that's who claimed the date, not the pagans, and they just stand by that. So they're going by something. I don't know. They're making it up, I guess, but and they're saying December 25th is outside the festival, therefore it's independent. The denial that it's a copy of Saturnalia, even though the wreaths and all that stuff all came from Saturnalia. And
the tree too.
Yeah, the tree, everything.
Yep.
And it was. They said the Christians celebrated Christ's birth before Saturnalia, but Saturnalia was 200 BC before Christ. So I don't know what they're getting at. Now, December 25th was claimed not to be the birthday of Saturn or Mithras. Therefore, that claim is false, that it was a false god. Did you hear that? Ever hear that?
I possibly, wait a minute. I think I might have.
Where did we get December 25th as Mithras' birthday?
Let's see. Well, you got Mithras, you have Osiris, you have all the other pagan gods.
They claim there's no documentation that says that, and Alexander Hislop's book, The Two Babylons, is the only place it states, supposedly, back in, 1800s? Now, I'm going to say this, though. The birth of Christ is considered this day by Christmas apologetics, and they deny the myth that there's any God's birthday. I will give them this. The date of Mithras' birth was not proven. It's never been established when he was born. There was Mithras worship, but it wasn't established December 25th. That is a myth. But what isn't a myth, and what they claim is a myth, but it isn't because it's documented. I've got documentation that December 25th was the winter solstice, and it was claimed the birth date of the unconquerable sun, or Solus Invicti. So it might be claimed that it's Mithra. It might be denied that it's Mithras' birthday. However, it cannot be denied that it was a celebration of Sol Invicti.
Mm-hmm.
December 25th. So therefore, they're wrong. And also, the North Yule god was worshipped on December 21st. So everything was around this time. That gives you kind of an indication why they were doing it at this time. It wasn't because it was Christ's real birthday. It was because it was masking pagan gods.
Mm-hmm.
Or merging, fusing the pagan gods. And what about gift giving? I heard the claim that the reason we give gifts isn't because they were giving gifts for the offering of Saturn during the Saturnalia. That's ridiculous, Darren. They weren't giving gifts in the Christian Christmas because of that. They were given gifts in Christmas because it's proven in the Bible that they gave gifts. Where did you see that they gave gifts to each other in the Bible? Have you? You're muted.
Oh, gold, frankincense, and myrrh during the birth of Christ.
To who?
Well, to
everybody?
Mary and not everybody. Joseph.
To Jesus, though.
Right.
Not that the people didn't give it one to another,
No.
right? Oh, no,
Good
no.
point.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it wasn't a yearly. Do you remember the Christians in the Bible? How every year they gave gifts every year to each other? No.
Never.
It was a one-time event. They gave gifts, and they say that's proof that we give gifts to each other because they gave gifts to the Messiah. So they're doing the same thing that the Saturnalia did. They gave gifts for their God to each other. The Bible presents one account of the fulfillment of Messiah when the Savior was born. And the nativity, maybe the nativity scene dramatizes it, and all this time, all this stuff. But just the dramatization doesn't give us reason to put it at this December date along with the other gods. But I guess they say again, any day you honor Christ is fine. But why are you honoring his birthday, first of all, like that? Second of all, why are you doing it with the same adoration as to the other gods, with greenery and trees and everything else? And then substituting and saying, oh, that's honoring Christ. How's that honoring Christ? You're putting up trees. You're honoring the trees. You're honoring.
There's even verses of scripture about that, about how they deck it and they fasten it so it doesn't move. And I forget which book. That's the Old Testament, but I don't know if it was. I could always Google it.
Yeah.
Whether it's applying to the Christmas tree or not, could be questionable, but still, I'm sure that could apply.
Now, I brought up Alexander Hislop. The two Babylons, they make a conclusion that the Christian festivals of Rome, he made a claim that the Christian festivals of Rome came from pagan Babylonian rituals, and then worked backwards to put the evidences to his hypotheses, rather than let the evidence be found to prove the conclusion. All right? So let's say that's true. Let's put Alexander Hislop aside. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the documents that we know. Now, I'm going to say this in all candorness, that Saturnalia as a whole has never been described fully from beginning to end. It's only been in pieces. Our modern understanding of this festival has been pieced together from accounts, letters, documents, legends, rituals. And a 5th century Latin historian, Macrobius, documented the Saturnalia events and described it during the reign of Justinus, King Saturn, as a time of great happiness. So at least 400 AD, we have documentation. In his work, the Saturnalia was a festival of lights leading to the winter solstice. Have you seen a festival of lights leading up to the Christmas day? I have.
All over people's houses. Yep.
They're having the festival of lights at the park.
Here in Albany.
Yeah, you can go to the parks and see it. It's an abundance presence of candles symbolizing all this stuff. And back then they had an abundant presence of candle lights symbolizing the quest for knowledge and truth. And the renewal of light and the coming new year was celebrated in the latter Roman Empire at the Solus Invicti celebration, birthday of the unconquerable sun, December 25th. This is in 400 AD. Wow. Documented by Macrobius. People don't like this. stuff. So they
It's the
try
truth,
to
though.
they try to
Gotta deal with it.
squash. Oh, he was a heretic. Oh, he wasn't a real historian. Oh, and then they go backwards, just like they say. You take the evidence and you use that Hislop made a conclusion and then look for evidence. They do the same thing when they disprove it, don't they? When they disprove that Christmas was a pagan holiday, they go backwards to prove it. They do the same thing. That's my problem with the Christian apologetics, with that. They're not thorough and they're weak in their argument. Now, there's a 2nd century writer, Lucian, and he accounts for Saturnalia as it is Kronos himself who proclaims the festive season. And some claim it was just a traditional time for festivals because it was nothing else to do during the winter time. So this was a notorious time for festivals. So it falls suit that the Christians just kind of latched on to the winter festivals and made up Christmas to coincide. They'll say, no, why would they do that? Well, there was a lot of things they should have done. They shouldn't have done. They submitted to Rome in a lot of times, a lot of cases. A lot of times they submitted to the Roman Church, the Catholic Roman Church. And I mentioned this already. Saturnalia was practiced over 200 years before Christ. In 100 BC, it became a festival lasting 7 days from December 17th to December 23rd. So my idea of uncomfortableness is bringing Christ, now knowing that it's not really his birthday, and bringing Christ into a festival that was already established as a pagan festival gets uncomfortable for me. I heard one gentleman, though, make the point. Now, I noticed they don't defend it on its own stance. They defend it with straw man arguments. Like they won't defend why it's established as an origin of Christian origin, and they won't establish it independent of just being a Christian or origin. They'll bring up other alternative questions. Like this one gentleman came on and said, all right, so you're saying that, he's saying it's not pagan. He's going, but you're saying it's pagan. So that means we can't go into Starbucks because that's pagan. That means we can't buy at Amazon because that's based on pagan occultism. That means we can't go to Walmart because that's based on pagan occultism. That means we can't do anything or else we're hypocrites because we can't do anything that's associated with pagans. So he's actually admitting that it is associated with paganism while he's denying that it was. But he's using the case that it is. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So my answer to that would be when we're in the merchant squares, we don't question in our conscience where people got stuff or what they did with it. You know, just like when you eat meat, Paul says, don't question where it came from.
Right.
That it was offered to other gods. Just eat the darn thing. I identify the occult symbolism in all the companies. That would mean I wouldn't be able to stick with any of the companies, right, Darren? But we're not talking about shopping at a company that all the companies are dominated by secularism, paganism, occultism. We're not saying that you got to stay away from it all. What we're saying is specifically taking a birthday of a god and transforming it and changing its name and making it our God, making it Jesus, and replacing the God with Jesus and saying that we're going to just take that holiday that the pagan celebrated and bring Christ into it. We're talking more than just shopping at Walmart. You know what I mean? We're not talking about worshiping when we go to Walmart. But when we celebrate something that was profane to begin with, and we're changing it to replace it and counterfeit it with something to our liking, why do we even have to replace it?
Good point.
We're doing the rituals with them. Unlike when I go to Walmart, am I doing a ritual to occultism? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now,
That makes
Starbucks is a
sense.
different story. I don't like Starbucks because I don't like that symbol. No,
Right.
I don't like Starbucks because I'm not going to pay expensive. I'm not going to pay expensive amount of money for a cheap coffee.
In fact, that logo pertains to like a marine spirit that lures
It's a siren.
sailors.
Yeah,
siren.
it's called a siren. Yeah,
Siren, yep.
it was luring sailors. I mean, it's prominently luring sailors, and they use it for commerce, like we're luring people into our store. They don't use it the same way, but it's still alluring in itself. But see, I'm not going to stay away from stuff because the company thinks. But I'm also not worshiping. Now, what if I was to go into Starbucks and say, I'm going to make that Starbucks character, I'm going to imagine she's Mary, the mother of God. And I'm going to honor her as the mother of God. What am I doing? I'm just replacing it.
Yep.
I'm still honoring the pagan statue. I'm just calling it something different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that would be worship. I'm not saying worship Walmarts. I'm just saying shop there, But when we partake in these rituals the same way that they do, it makes me uncomfortable that we have to do it the same way. Now, as I said,
keep in mind,
yeah,
and keep in mind, Walmart, we might have to get some necessities, whereas Starbucks coffee is not a necessity. So
right,
we're kind of
that's true
trapped.
too.
Yeah,
and what else is Walmart good for? That's where we get our Christmas decorations. No. I'm just kidding. So the actual date of Christ is really only merely speculated. Oh, Catholic Encyclopedia says that there was a correspondence between Cyril of Jerusalem and Pope Julius in 300 AD, quoted by John of Nicaea in the 19th century, is sometimes given as a source for a claim that in the 4th century, Pope Julius I formalized the nativity of Christ that should be celebrated on December 25th. So the Catholics admit that that's the date that they give. So I don't know. It's too close to the Roman celebration for me to really make a big hoopla about it. Now,
sure is.
Now, like I said, will I eat on that day? Yeah. If my family gathers, it's just like any other days off, holidays. It doesn't matter, despite what the world is celebrating. We still get together because everybody's got it off. Everybody, travels on this day. It's a good day since everything's closed to just join in family. Does that mean we have to shut our doors? No, but we don't have to partake in the ritual. Adorning our houses with trees and ornaments and pagan decor. We don't have to do that, right? Even if we want to believe it's Christ's birthday.
Right.
But they say that the Christians are the ones that decorated the Christmas tree and brought it in the house. Is that true?
Nope.
Why?
The timing, first of all, like you just mentioned.
Good point.
Yep. And a lot of circumstantial evidence indicating it is all, pagan or just contrary to, there's no factual proof that it is pertaining to the birth of Christ.
Well, they'll say it is. They'll say, look, the Christians were the first ones that brought the tree in and decorated it. But we see
What does the tree have to do?
Go on.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. What's a tree have to do with Jesus Christ?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's it called when you replace something with something else? It's like a substitute.
Right.
Why?
Right.
Jesus wasn't honored with symbolism. We didn't need to honor him with symbolisms. So what does that even have to do with him? Exactly.
In fact, doesn't that break the first commandment, right? You shall have no other gods. That could be a god if you're replacing Jesus with a tree,
They'll say it's not replacing him, it's just reminding us of him. So that tree is reminding you of Jesus?
I don't need any reminder. If you're in fellowship with him in right standing, you don't need a tree to remind you or any other object.
And decorating it is honoring decorating for him? Adorning a tree? Isn't that the same as adorning a statue?
Yep.
Isn't that the same as Jeremiah 10 says they cut the tree down, they put it in a stand?
That's what the verse I was referring to
Right.
before.
Do you know the
Jeremiah.
argument says? The argument say, yes, but look further in that verse. They didn't just cut down the tree and put it on a stand. They carved it into a god. Oh, so because they carved it into a god and adorned it, Darren, with gold and silver tinsel, and we don't carve it, we just put the gold and silver tinsel on it? It's not the same thing? It sounds exactly the same thing to me.
Sure it does. Yep.
That's why I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't have any decor in my house.
Neither do I.
I
used
do
to, but it was a hassle putting lights out on the pillars and
I don't like what it represents, so I forbid
right,
it.
yeah.
I forbid it in my house.
Yep,
And
me
my
too.
household
So-
honors it, you know.
It's an abomination before God if it boils down to it, you know.
So the last section here, let's just sum it up with, so is it a bad thing to establish this day, a day for Christ's birth, even if it isn't? What's the big deal? Isn't it always glory when we celebrate Jesus, no matter when it is? Just happen to pick this date to do it? What would you say? They'll say, you know, it's honoring Jesus, so we just pick this day. What's the big deal? My thing is I'm uncomfortable with knowing that it was picked for a certain reason. You know, you brought up last time, don't mix the holy with the profane. And we do that. You can't
What
have
fellowship hath light with darkness.
exactly. And the similarities with the tree and the wreaths. The wreaths. Oh, by the way, did you know the wreaths and the mistletoes in the Yule at this time? They say that's even Christian. But then we find that the mistletoes, they honored the white and red berries and fertility worships before this event, before Christmas was established. And the mistletoe represented sexual intimacy.
Like the wreath does too.
And the wreath does too.
Yeah.
And the Yule is a Germanic paganism from a concept of the bonfire offering and a symbol for the returning of the sun. But it's adopted by the Christian celebrations to light it on each of the 12 days of Christmas. Now you have 12 days of Christmas, you have 7 days of Saturnalia. You see what I mean? The similarities are uncanny.
I don't have
At the
anything to do
same
with
time.
it. Knowing the origin of it, it just no thanks, you know.
All right, so folks, I'm not judging you. I'm not even criticizing you. And by certainly, can I not tell anybody to just basically ignore this all, consider what I say and abandon it this year. Yeah, I understand you're going to defend it if you want to do it. I'm not telling you not to. That's up to you. I'm just showing you why I'm uncomfortable with it. And I'm showing you the similarities to the other orientations around it. And trying to bring to the fact that it wasn't an original Christian thought. It was a Christian thought that used substantial elements around them for their celebration and their festival and just basically changed the name. But just the fact that they changed the name and paganism has been dismissed, we don't really honor those gods, we don't know those gods, proves that Christianity won out with Christmas after all. So they bring Christ into it and they pat themselves on the back for taking over a pagan festival. However, I know pagans that still celebrate Christmas. And they just use the name Christmas because the whole world traditionally does, but they don't honor Christ any more than anybody else does.
Nope.
So where's the defense? And most of the Christians who say it's to honor Christ, what do they get into? They get into the commercialization, they get into the decor, they get into all the elements of the secular beliefs, and they don't honor Christ at this time. They mention him and they bring him up in the nativity, but it's all about the family and gift giving and joy. It's nothing to do with what they say they do it for. And I'll tell you right now, if you had a pagan in your household during Christmas, they would not feel offended, threatened, or anything.
Oh.
Because they're celebrating it with you the same way you are.
And most people are relieved when the holiday's over with. Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. That's another point. It brings
you take
headaches.
a deep breath and
yeah, it brings headaches and hardship most of the time. People go broke after the holiday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Joy, Darren. Joy.
All these carols. What do they say? The most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The most burdensome time of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's not joy as they want to personify.
Of course not.
It's a perception. They just,
hey, one good thing, it keeps the economy going because people are buying gifts and spending money.
That's when I should start selling merchandise and stuff. Hey, you know what? Off the backs of the world, they want to honor it. Darren, we should be profiting off it. Why not?
Yep.
We're not doing anything profane. We're profiting off of their belief. Profiting off of their, I should say, off of their misleading of it.
Right.
That's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we'll sum it up here. So just make your own choice, folks. I just brought up the uncomfortableness I have with it. And for those that celebrate the actual holiday, happy Saturnalia to all. And to all a good night. All right. We'll see you next time.